Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to note and thank some of my colleagues here that we have launched a bipartisan Congressional Infrastructure Caucus, and that includes Mr. Graves and Mr. Duncan and John Patrick Maloney. So we'll be working to get our colleagues from all different committees, not just this committee, because as we've been discussing here today, the revenue aspects are incredibly important. That involves Ways and Means, and energy and commerce as well, as we look at how technology is rapidly changing the needs and demands. So I wanted to let you know that and urge any of my colleagues who are not yet members, sign up today. We are facing, okay, so Mr. DeFazio is starting the bidding, thank you. We're being outcompeted by China and other countries that are robustly investing in their infrastructure, and we don't have 20 or 40 years to wait to get on with it. Mr. McCarty, you encapsulated the remarks of many of the manufacturers in my district who are looking at us and saying, how can I possibly compete when I can't get my goods to market and I can't even get my workers here to the factory? That's the #1 complaint in my state of Connecticut, is actually transportation, more than taxes, more than anything else. And so this problem has been brewing for decades. Everybody here has mentioned it. We need revenue. We need revenue when you can do financing, and I think a lot of us are open to creative ways of financing, but we have a serious revenue problem. We've relied historically on user fees. The world is changing. Cars are more efficient. We didn't index the gas tax. We're having alternative fuels. A number of members of Congress here drive vehicles that don't pay any gas tax whatsoever. So we need to look down the road. My kids never take cars. They use a car-sharing service. We're looking at autonomous vehicles. So I'd like all of you to help with us think about how are we going to look at those aspects? How are we going to be evaluating projects based on future infrastructure needs when we have such rapidly changing technology, rapidly changing usage patterns, increasing urbanization, which Mr. Rogoff talked about. We're going to be needing to do a lot more transit if you look at the demographic patterns. So that's happening very fast, and we're going to need your help in thinking that through. So that's one question. Another one is on the P3s. One of the concerns I have, and I think they need to be part of the mix, but that prioritizes making revenue not necessarily what is in the public's interest in meeting those needs. So it meets certain kinds of projects. It may be very smart for something like high-speed rail in the Northeast, where you know their actual high-speed rail would have a revenue stream and you need massive investment. Maybe that works. For a lot of things, it doesn't. I'd love to hear your thoughts on life cycle costs and fix it first. A lot of my concern, again, with the creative financing mechanisms are they tend not to deal with actually fixing current infrastructure. It prioritizes something that can create a new revenue stream. And living in an older part of infrastructure in the Northeast, you know, we're concerned. And I do want to point out my state is one of those states that has continued to raise the gas tax. And yet, some of the proposals on the table, and Mr. Lipinski and Mr. Davis and I were at the White House 2 weeks ago, and they are talking about incentivizing states to step up. Well, my state's been stepping up for some time now. So I think it's really important that we not punish states who have already taken those steps to reward ones that have not. So just a few questions, and anyone who wants to get started, thank you.
Well, I might quickly take a question on life cycle cost, because as you pointed out, especially in the Northeast and areas like Connecticut, you've got systems like Metro-North and others that have been deteriorated over time with age and have struggled to recapitalize and rebuild what they've got. I think it is right for this committee in crafting a new initiative to, whether it's highways, transit, water, or anyone, to ask project sponsors to identify and evaluate the merits of their proposals based on not just their ability to build it, but they're having the revenue streams to maintain it. It's something we started at the Federal Transit Administration when I was there, and that is at least, the question was, if we're going to invest in expanding your footprint, shouldn't we at least know how you're doing in maintaining your current footprint? We have a mechanism in Sound Transit. In our ballot measures, the voters adopt a capital plan and they adopt increased taxes. The taxes are then rolled back to the level necessary to operate and maintain it. So we have a revenue stream for maintenance. A great many other systems don't. We're now paying the price for that. And it's certainly a question, whether it's highways or transit or water, people should be asking.
And if I may just answer on the fix it first, or I mean, we certainly are proponents of new construction, and certainly feel that there's an unbelievable need in this country for new rail, new water, new bridge, new roads and highways. Take a look at the American Society of Civil Engineers' most recent report of where we currently stand with our current infrastructure of a graded D+. We have over 50,000 structurally deficient bridges that our citizens are driving across every day. So as we try to develop these new revenue streams to build new construction, we have to focus on what is currently deficient in our country today. Many bridges and tunnels that are, decades old, 50, 60, 70 years old, that we're putting ourselves and our fellow citizens at risk every day by them driving over those bridges, by them driving through those tunnels, by getting on that Amtrak train and riding on rail that is deficient. So we have to come up with a way to fix our existing system as we also continue to meet the challenges of today's society of the growing needs of what we have.
And if I might, with regard to looking at the entire capital plan, I think we have to look at this whole bill really like a company would look at an investment portfolio. There's not a particular solution that's going to meet the needs of every region of the country uniformly. From a standpoint of AASHTO and from a standpoint of a state DOT, the flexibility, opening up the flexibility of the surface transportation so that states can meet their local needs. We have a planning framework that we go through utilizing metropolitan planning organizations and regional planning commissions that the needs of those communities, they know best what their needs are, whether it's new construction, expansion for capacity, or fixing the existing system. And the flexibility to utilize the federal funds in concert with those local needs, I think, is a critical aspect.
I would just add one more comment, if I could. The maintenance issue has gotten so big in this country that when you look alone in the state of California, $140 billion of backlog maintenance to get the system, both the interstate system and the actual local systems up to grade, that almost has to be a priority. We cannot be isolating funds just for expansion when we haven't taken care of what we have already. And I would suggest that a lot of the states today are focusing on that because they understand that backlog has gotten so immense that if they don't take care of it, the cost basis goes up exponentially if they don't take care of it to begin with. So I would commend the legislature in California for putting together a $50 billion program to mostly focus on getting that entire infrastructure transportation system up to speed so that they can move forward from this point on. So the backlog and the long-term versus the short-term, we've got to take care of the short-term, otherwise we won't have a long-term.
Mr. Davis.
Hey, Mr.